My entitled brother demanded I hand over half of my inheritance, sneering. As the eldest, I deserve more. You should be grateful I'm even leaving you anything. When I refused, he stole my legal documents and tried to claim everything as his own. His smug expression shattered when the lawyer stated, "Actually, this will has a secret clause, and you just lost every penny." My dad passed away in early 2024. He left behind a modest estate in Kansas City, Missouri, a small house, a few investments, and some savings. He had always been clear that he wanted to split everything equally between me and my older brother, Mark. Dad was a straightforward man who believed in fairness. He had a will drafted by his lawyer, Mr. Thompson, to ensure his wishes were followed. Mark and I hadn't been close for years. He always acted like he was better than everyone else. He moved to Chicago, got into some shady business deals, and only came around when he needed something. I stayed in Kansas City, working as a teacher and taking care of Dad when his health started to decline. After the funeral, we met with Mr. Thompson to go over the will. It was simple. Everything was to be divided equally between Mark and me. Mark's face turned red. "This is a joke," he said. "As the eldest, I should get more. You should be grateful I'm even letting you have anything." I was stunned. "It's Dad's will, Mark. He wanted us to share everything equally." He scoffed and stormed out. A few days later, I noticed that some important documents were missing from my home. I had copies of Dad's will and other legal papers stored in a locked drawer. The lock wasn't broken, but the papers were gone. I had a sinking feeling that Mark had taken them. I called Mr. Thompson to let him know. He assured me that he had the original documents and that everything was secure. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. A week later, I received a notice from the probate court. Mark had filed a claim stating that he was the sole heir to Dad's estate. He presented a will that named only him as the beneficiary. I was furious. I knew Dad would never do that. I contacted Mr. Thompson immediately. He reviewed the documents Mark submitted and confirmed that they were forgeries. We filed a motion to contest the fraudulent will and presented the original documents to the court. During the court proceedings, Mr. Thompson revealed that Dad had included a special clause in his will. It stated that if any beneficiary attempted to contest the will or commit fraud, they would forfeit their inheritance. Mark's plan backfired spectacularly. The judge ruled in my favor. Mark lost all rights to the inheritance and faced legal consequences for his actions. He was fined and sentenced to community service. I was left with the full inheritance, but the experience left a bitter taste. I used the money to honor Dad's memory, donating to local charities and funding scholarships. I wanted to make sure his legacy lived on in a positive way. Mark and I haven't spoken since the trial. Sometimes I wonder if he regrets his actions, but I doubt it. Greed can blind people to what's truly important. This experience taught me the importance of safeguarding legal documents and being vigilant against fraud. It also reinforced the value of integrity and the consequences of deceit. After the court ruling, I thought it was over. I thought Mark would disappear, maybe lick his wounds and move on. But I underestimated how far someone driven by bitterness and pride could go. About 2 months after I was awarded full control of Dad's estate, weird things started happening. First, my car tires were slashed. All 4, right in front of my house. Then someone broke into my mailbox and scattered my letters across the lawn. Small things, annoying things, but they felt targeted. At first, I didn't think it was Mark. It seemed too childish, too messy. But then I found something taped to my front door one morning. A printout of a photo of my old house, Dad's house, now legally mine. On the bottom, written in Sharpie, were the words, "It should have been mine." I took the note to the police. They couldn't do much with it. No fingerprints, no cameras, no witnesses. Just a creepy note and my growing suspicion. I started checking all the locks twice. Bought a security camera. Changed my routines. But it didn't stop. I'd come home from work and find things slightly moved inside my house. Not stolen, just moved. A cup turned upside down. The TV remote set on top of the fridge. Once, I found the family photo of Dad and me face down on the mantel. I knew what it meant. He'd been inside. I changed the locks again and upgraded the security system. When the footage finally caught him, Mark, in a hoodie, creeping into the backyard. It felt like the final crack in whatever piece of my childhood I had left. I filed a restraining order. It was granted. But it didn't stop him. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a printed email exchange between Mark and some sleazy private investigator. Mark had paid him to dig up dirt on me, trying to prove I was mentally unstable and unfit to manage the estate. The email was dated just a few days before the court ruling. So while pretending to walk away, he'd already been setting his next trap. I kept the letter, added it to my file of evidence. My lawyer told me to stay calm, stay out of it, let the law do its job. But something in me snapped. I couldn't believe this was my brother. The same kid I used to ride bikes with. The same kid who held my hand when Mom died. Somewhere along the way, the greed, the losses, the constant chasing of money, it had hollowed him out. But I wasn't going to let him win. One day, I got a call from a bank in St. Louis. They said someone claiming to be me had tried to open a joint account using fake IDs and forged documents. My name, my social security number, even my address, everything was there. He was trying to funnel property assets under his name. Again. This time, the bank called the cops. The IDs were sloppy. His fingerprints were already in the system. When the detective contacted me and confirmed it was Mark, I felt sick. He was pushing boundaries now. This was no longer a sibling dispute. It was a full-on identity attack. And still, part of me felt guilty. Like maybe if I had handled things differently, this wouldn't have gone so far. But guilt doesn't stop a thief. The court date for the new charges is coming up soon. Forgery, fraud, violating the restraining order. What Mark doesn't know is that there's something else in Dad's will. Something he missed because he was too busy trying to change it. A week before the new court date, I got a call from Mr. Thompson, Dad's lawyer. His voice was tight, serious. "There's something you need to come by and see. Now." I drove over, heart pounding. He slid a thick envelope across the desk. "Your father left something. A secondary document. It wasn't supposed to be opened unless very specific conditions were met. Conditions that have now been met." It was a sealed letter from Dad, handwritten. Dated just weeks before his stroke. I read it, and my hands shook the whole time. Dad had known. He'd known Mark would pull something. He even wrote that he feared Mark had been manipulating Mom before she passed, convincing her to move joint accounts, change insurance beneficiaries, all while playing the grieving son. Dad had been suspicious but didn't have proof. He'd kept quiet, trying to protect me from the mess. But this letter? It laid everything out. Dad had moved some of his assets, stocks, bonds, even a second bank account in Des Moines, into a trust in my name. Quietly. Legally. But it wasn't in the main will, because it was conditional. If Mark contested anything. If he forged, lied, or stole. If he tried to hurt me. The clause in the will had been the public protection. But the letter? That was Dad's real safety net. He wrote, "If Mark has tried to take what isn't his, then this is yours, fully. I wish it didn't come to this. But if it has, I want you to know I saw him clearly in the end." I was speechless. The assets in the trust were bigger than I expected. Retirement investments, life insurance, even a property I never knew about in Lake of the Ozarks. It made sense now why Mark had gone so far. He must have found hints, snippets of emails, forgotten paper trails. Enough to know there was more. But not enough to claim it. Not legally. And here's where it got worse. The detective working Mark's case reached out to me again. Turns out Mark wasn't just trying to steal my inheritance. He was under investigation for elder financial abuse. Not just Dad. 3 other families. All older men who had passed within the last 2 years. All connected to shady real estate transfers. And one of the families had a daughter who swore she saw Mark at their father's house right before he died. I felt sick. The detective warned me to be careful. Your brother's been spiraling for a while. He covers it up with charm, with the failed businessman story, but it's darker than that. He knows he's out of chances. Then came the worst twist yet. One night, just before the hearing, I got home and found the front door cracked open. I froze. Walked in slow. House was quiet. Too quiet. Everything looked untouched, except the living room. The fireplace was on. On the mantel, another photo of Dad and me. Only this time, there was a knife stabbed through the frame. A sticky note next to it. You took him from me. I'm taking everything from you. I went cold. Called the cops. They swept the house, took fingerprints, reviewed the camera footage. Nothing. Whoever did it avoided every angle. I knew it was him, but without proof? Just another incident. I moved into a friend's guest house the next day. Couldn't sleep in that place anymore. And yet, even with all this happening, Mark walked into court that Friday like he owned the room. Smug. Confident. Like he had some card up his sleeve. But as the proceedings started, his smirk faded. My lawyer introduced the trust. The judge reviewed the new documents. Mark's face went pale. But he didn't lose it. Not yet. Then the detective walked in with 2 other officers. Not part of our case, part of a different one. They were there to arrest Mark. On the spot. For financial fraud, elder abuse, and witness intimidation. His head snapped toward me as they cuffed him. This isn't over. He spat. You'll regret this. You think Dad picked you? I didn't say anything. But what Mark didn't know, what he still doesn't know, is that there's one more thing Dad left me. A thumb drive. Hidden in the back of an old photo album, found only after I cleared out Dad's storage unit. On it, voice recordings. Emails. Bank transfers. Receipts. Everything. Dad had been preparing for this. And I haven't turned it in yet. Because the game's not over. Not until he knows exactly how much Dad never trusted him. And how deep the hole he's digging really is. I held on to that thumb drive for days. I listened to every recording, read every file. Dad had started collecting evidence almost a year before he died. He recorded phone calls with Mark, saved screenshots of suspicious transfers, even documented conversations where Mark tried to convince him to rewrite the will. To make things fair. The drive didn't just have stuff about me or Dad, it had a lot more. Evidence that showed Mark was using fake companies to shuffle money between bank accounts. Evidence that could tie him to multiple fraud cases. I wasn't sure why Dad didn't take it to the police himself. Maybe he hoped it wouldn't come to that. Maybe he hoped Mark would stop. He didn't. I gave the thumb drive to the detective working Mark's case. I didn't tell him right away what was on it. I just said, "It's time." 2 weeks later, they filed new charges. Wire fraud. Conspiracy. Tampering with financial records. I heard from one of the victims' families, an older woman whose dad lost his house right before he died. She cried on the phone when she found out Mark was finally being held responsible. Her dad died thinking he had nothing left. At the final hearing, the judge didn't even look at Mark. She just read the charges, the sentence, and the restitution. He'd served time. Years. Mark's lawyer tried to argue that I had set him up. Said I had a personal vendetta. That I was a bitter younger sibling looking for revenge. But the documents, the voice memos, and the forged wills told the real story. When they took Mark out of the courtroom in handcuffs, he looked at me one last time. "You ruined me," he said, quiet but sharp. And maybe he was right. But he ruined himself long before I ever stepped in. I just made sure he didn't get away with it. After the sentencing, I went back to Dad's house for the first time in months. It still smelled like him, coffee, and old books. I sat down in his favorite chair and finally let myself feel all of it. The anger. The grief. The guilt. I hadn't been perfect in all this either. I let my guard down. I ignored signs. I tried too hard to keep peace when I should have protected myself from the beginning. And deep down, a part of me had still wanted to believe that Mark could change. That maybe, just maybe, losing Dad would bring us together instead of tearing us apart. I was wrong. Dad knew better. There was one last letter in the storage box. A short one. Just a few lines, written in his shaky handwriting. If you're reading this, I'm sorry it had to be you to finish what I couldn't. I love you. And I'm proud of you. Make peace with the past. But don't ever forget who tried to break you. I still visit Dad's grave every month. I tell him what I've done with the money. I donated most of it. Set up scholarships. Funded a program for seniors who are targeted by scammers. Because that's what Dad would have wanted. And Mark? He sends letters from prison. Angry ones? Apologetic ones? Ones that try to twist the story again, like he's the victim. I don't answer. The last thing I owe him is silence.